I was staring at the fluorescent orange notice taped to my front door when I realized the HOA president had finally lost her mind completely. The paper fluttered in the cold February wind, and I squirmed it free from the tape, my fingers already numb from the 18-degree weather in Columbus, Ohio. The header read, "Final Notice of Violation" in bold red letters, and below it, a paragraph that made my blood pressure spike despite the freezing temperature. Resident at 4782 Meadowbrook Lane has been observed with excessive ice accumulation on driveway and walkway, creating hazardous conditions in violation of Section 12.4 of the HOA bylaws. This is your third and final notice. Failure to remedy within 48 hours will result in fines of $500 per day and potential eviction proceedings. I read it 3 times, each time getting angrier. Ice accumulation in Ohio in February, during one of the coldest winters we had seen in a decade. My name is Trevor Simmons, and I had lived in Meadowbrook Estates for exactly 8 months. I bought the modest 3-bedroom ranch house last June after my divorce finalized, needing a fresh start and a place where my 2 kids could visit on weekends. The neighborhood seemed perfect at first: quiet streets, well-maintained homes, good schools nearby. The HOA seemed like a minor inconvenience, something I barely thought about when I signed the paperwork. That was before I met Patricia Henderson. Patricia was the HOA president, a 52-year-old woman with short blonde hair that she kept in that aggressive soccer mom cut, the kind that screams, "I want to speak to your manager," from 100 yards away. She drove a white Escalade with a "Live, Laugh, Love" bumper sticker, and had made it her personal mission to make my life miserable since the day I moved in. The first violation notice came in September because my garbage cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day. Never mind that collection was at 6 in the morning, and I had gotten home at 7 after an overnight shift at the hospital where I worked as an ER nurse. The second notice came in November because my lawn had excessive leaf coverage. It had been 2 leaves. I counted them, but this was insane even by Patricia's standards. I stomped into my house, my work boots tracking salt and slush across the entryway tile. The heating system kicked on with a familiar rattle, and I pulled out my phone to take pictures of the notice. Then I walked back outside to document my driveway. Yes, there was ice. There was ice on every driveway on the street. We had gotten 6 inches of snow 2 days ago, followed by freezing rain yesterday, followed by temperatures that had not crept above 20 degrees. I had salted my driveway twice, chipped away what I could, but nature was not cooperating. The weather forecast showed another week of below-freezing temperatures. I photographed my driveway, then walked down the street photographing my neighbors' driveways. Every single one had ice. Some were worse than mine. The Hendersons' driveway, 3 houses down, was a solid sheet of ice from top to bottom. Wait. Henderson. I stopped walking and pulled out the violation notice again. Sure enough, it was signed by Patricia Henderson, HOA president. The same Patricia Henderson whose driveway looked like an ice skating rink. My phone rang as I stood there in the cold. It was my ex-wife, Linda. "Hey," I answered, tucking my free hand into my coat pocket. "Trevor, I am sorry, but I cannot take the kids this weekend," Linda said without preamble. "My mom fell and broke her hip. I am driving to Cleveland tomorrow to help her out for a while." I closed my eyes and counted to 5. "Linda, it is my weekend with them. I have not seen Tyler and Emma in 2 weeks because of your business trip." I know, but what am I supposed to do?" "My mom needs help and you are better at handling them anyway. They will just be bored at my mom's place. Better at handling them. like being a parent was some kind of skill I had that she did not. Fine. Whatever, I hope your mom is okay. Thanks, I will make it up to you. She hung up before I could respond. I stood in the street, phone still pressed to my ear, watching my breath cloud in the frigid air. The neighbor across from me, an older man named George Sullivan, was outside scraping ineffectually at his driveway with a shovel. You get one of these too? I called out, holding up the orange notice. George looked up, his face red from exertion and cold. Yep, third one this week. Patricia came by yesterday and told me I had 48 hours or she would put a lien on my property. A lien? Can she even do that? Hell if I know. My wife is having me call a lawyer on Monday. This is ridiculous. I am 73 years old. I cannot be out here breaking my back trying to chip ice in this weather. I am going to have a heart attack. I walked across the street to his driveway. Go inside, George. Seriously. You are going to hurt yourself. This ice is not going anywhere until it warms up. Tell that to Patricia, he muttered, but he headed inside, leaning heavily on his shovel like a cane. I spent the rest of Friday afternoon fuming and researching Ohio HOA laws on my laptop. The more I read, the less sense Patricia's notice made. HOAs could enforce reasonable rules, sure, but requiring homeowners to somehow control weather-related ice during record cold temperatures seemed like it would fall into the unreasonable category. The bit about eviction especially bothered me. HOAs could not just evict people. They could fine you, place liens, but eviction was a legal process that required actual grounds. Saturday morning, I woke up to another notice on my door. This one was even more aggressive. Second notice regarding ice violation. You now have 24 hours to comply. Eviction proceedings will begin Monday morning. An emergency HOA board meeting has been scheduled for Monday, February 8th at 7 p.m. at the community center to discuss your continued violations and removal from Meadowbrook Estates. My hands shook as I read it, and not from the cold. Removal from Meadowbrook Estates. I had a mortgage, a legally binding property deed. They could not just remove me. Could they? I called the number on my mortgage paperwork and got an emergency line for the title company. After explaining the situation to 3 different people, I finally got someone who sounded competent. Mr. Simmons, HOAs can be tricky, but they cannot evict you in the traditional sense, the woman explained. Her name was Rachel, and she sounded tired. They can fine you, and if you do not pay the fines, they can place a lien on your property. Eventually, they could foreclose on that lien, but that is a lengthy legal process. It sounds like this HOA president is overstepping her authority significantly. I would recommend getting a real estate attorney involved. Can I even afford an attorney over ice on my driveway? You might not be able to afford not to have one if they are threatening your property. Look, I am going to send you the contact information for someone who handles HOA disputes. Her name is Jennifer Nelson, and she is tough. Tell her I referred you. I thanked Rachel and hung up, then immediately called the number she texted me. It went to voicemail. I left a detailed message explaining the situation and asking for an emergency consultation on Monday morning before the supposed board meeting. The rest of Saturday, I spent time with my kids. Tyler was 12 and mostly interested in his phone, but Emma was 8 and still thought I hung the moon. We built a snowman in the backyard, even though it was so cold the snow barely wanted to stick together. I made them hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and we watched movies until they fell asleep on the couch. I carried them to their beds one at a time, tucking them in like I used to when they were tiny. Emma stirred as I pulled her blanket up. "Dad," she mumbled, half asleep. "Yeah, sweetheart. Are we going to have to move again?" My chest tightened. "What? No, why would you think that?" I heard you on the phone. You sounded worried. I am not worried, baby. Everything is fine. Go back to sleep. She nodded and rolled over, clutching her stuffed elephant. I stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe, and felt rage building in my chest. Patricia Henderson was not just harassing me anymore. She was affecting my kids, making them feel unstable and unsafe. Sunday, I got proactive. I printed out every Ohio HOA statute I could find that seemed relevant. I documented everything with photographs and timestamps. I wrote down every interaction I had ever had with Patricia, every notice, every nasty comment at the mailbox. I was building a case, though for what exactly I was not sure yet. Jennifer Nelson called me back Sunday evening. "Mr. Simmons, I got your message. This situation sounds unusual, to put it mildly. I want you to forward me everything you have. Every notice, every email, every text message. I am going to do some research tonight, and I want to meet with you tomorrow at 1 p.m. at my office. Can you make that work?" "Absolutely. Thank you so much." "Do not thank me yet. My retainer is $2,500. I winced but agreed. I could put it on a credit card if I had to. This was my home, my kids' stability. It was worth it. Monday morning, I dropped the kids at school and went to work for a half shift I had already scheduled. The ER was busy with slip and fall injuries from the ice, which felt grimly ironic. An elderly woman came in with a fractured wrist from falling on her driveway. As I helped the doctor set her arm, I asked her if she lived in an HOA neighborhood. "Oh yes," she said through gritted teeth as the doctor worked, "and they have been sending me nasty letters about the ice, like I can control the weather." "Meadowbrook Estates?" I asked. "No, Riverview something." "But I have a friend in Meadowbrook, and she says their HOA president is absolutely insane, trying to evict people over ice." Small world, I thought. I left work at noon and drove to Jennifer Nelson's office in downtown Columbus. Her office was in a renovated building near the Capitol, all exposed brick and modern furniture. Jennifer herself was in her late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Simmons," she greeted me, shaking my hand firmly. "Sit down. I have been reviewing what you sent me, and I have some questions." For the next 45 minutes, she grilled me on every detail. When did I buy the house? What was I told about the HOA during closing? Did I receive a copy of the bylaws? Had I paid my HOA dues? What was the exact timeline of violations? I answered everything as thoroughly as I could. Yes, I received bylaws, but they were a 100-page document I had admittedly skimmed. Yes, I had paid my dues, $250 quarterly, always on time. The violation started in September and had escalated rapidly. "And this notice about eviction and removal from the community," Jennifer said, holding up the orange paper. "This is not standard language. HOAs typically talk about fines, liens, maybe foreclosure proceedings if it gets really bad. But eviction and removal, that is strange. What does it mean? I am not sure yet, but I do not like it." She leaned back in her chair. "Here is what I want to do. I am going to attend this board meeting with you tonight. I am going to observe and take notes. I am also going to request formally to see the HOA's governing documents, all of them. Their articles of incorporation, their bylaws, their deed restrictions, everything. Can they refuse? They can try. But Ohio law is pretty clear that homeowners have a right to review HOA documents. If they refuse, that is a red flag." She pulled out a contract. "I need you to sign this retainer agreement, and then we are going to go knock on Patricia Henderson's door right now." I blinked. Right now. I want to see her reaction when a lawyer shows up asking questions." You would be surprised what people reveal when they are caught off guard. 20 minutes later, we were standing on Patricia Henderson's doorstep. Her house was a large colonial at the entrance of the neighborhood, with pristine landscaping buried under snow and a driveway that, I noted with satisfaction, was still covered in ice. Patricia answered the door in yoga pants and a fleece pullover, her face already pinching into a scowl when she saw me. "Trevor, what do you want?" "Mrs. Henderson, my name is Jennifer Nelson, and I am Mr. Simmons' attorney," Jennifer said smoothly, handing Patricia a business card. "I am here to formally request copies of all Meadowbrook Estates HOA governing documents, including your articles of incorporation, bylaws, CC and Rs, and any amendments. I am also here to inform you that I will be attending tonight's board meeting as Mr. Simmons' legal representative." Patricia's face went through several colors, settling on an angry red. He cannot bring a lawyer to a board meeting. Actually, Ohio Revised Code Section 5312.03 grants homeowners the right to legal representation at HOA meetings. But if you would like to deny that right, please do so in writing so I can submit it as evidence in our lawsuit. "Lawsuit? There is no lawsuit, not yet," Jennifer said pleasantly. "The governing documents, please. You have 10 days to provide them under Ohio law, but I would appreciate them sooner. I do not have to give you anything right now. You will get them when I am good and ready." Patricia started to close the door, but Jennifer put her hand against it. "Mrs. Henderson, I am going to be very clear with you. Threatening to evict a homeowner over weather-related ice accumulation is legally dubious at best. If you follow through on those threats, you will open yourself and the HOA to significant legal liability. I strongly suggest you consult with the HOA's attorney before taking any further action." "We do not need an attorney. I know the rules, and Trevor has been in violation since day one. He does not respect this community, and tonight the board is going to vote to remove him permanently." Jennifer's eyebrows went up. "Remove him permanently? Can you explain what that means exactly?" "It means his deed will be revoked and he will be removed from the property. It is all in the bylaws." "His deed will be revoked," Jennifer repeated slowly. "Mrs. Henderson, who recorded your HOA's incorporation with the county. That is none of your business. Actually, it is public record, but since you are being difficult, I will just go check the county recorder's office myself." Jennifer handed Patricia another card. "My email and fax number are on there. I expect those documents by end of business Wednesday. Come on, Trevor." We walked back to our cars, parked on the street in front of Patricia's house. I was shaking, adrenaline dumping into my system. "Did you hear what she said?" I asked Jennifer. "She thinks she can revoke my deed." "I heard, and that is not how property law works, at all." Jennifer was typing rapidly on her phone. "I am going to the recorder's office right now. Something is very wrong here. Meet me at the community center at 6:30 tonight, half an hour before the meeting. Do not talk to Patricia or any other board members without me present." I agreed and drove home, my mind racing. How could Patricia think she could revoke a deed? Deeds were legal documents recorded with the county. You could not just undo them because someone had ice on their driveway. At 6:30, I met Jennifer in the parking lot of the Meadowbrook Estates Community Center, a small building at the back of the neighborhood near the playground. She was sitting in her car, and when I tapped on her window, her expression was somewhere between shock and excitement. "Get in," she said. I climbed into her passenger seat. "What did you find?" "Trevor, your HOA does not exist." I stared at her. "What?" "I mean it does not exist legally." I went to the Franklin County Recorder's office and searched every variation of Meadowbrook Estates HOA, Meadowbrook Estates Community Association, anything I could think of. There are no articles of incorporation filed, no deed restrictions recorded against the properties. Nothing. But I signed HOA documents when I bought the house. I am sure you did, but whoever created those documents never filed them properly with the county. In Ohio, for an HOA to have legal authority to enforce rules, collect dues, place liens, or do anything else, it has to be properly incorporated and the restrictions have to be recorded in the deed chain. Your HOA is not incorporated. It is just a bunch of neighbors who have been pretending to be an HOA. I let that sink in. So all those violation notices, the fines, the threats, legally meaningless. Patricia Henderson has no more authority over your property than any random person on the street. She has been running an unincorporated social club and threatening people with legal action she has no standing to take. Jennifer was grinning now, the kind of grin a shark might make. This is actually incredible. I have heard of HOAs losing their incorporation status through neglect, but I have never seen one that was never properly filed in the first place. So what do? We go into that meeting, and we let Patricia dig herself a nice deep hole. I want to hear what she says, what authority she claims to have. Do not interrupt, do not argue, just let her talk. And then, at the right moment, I am going to drop this bomb on her. The community center was filling up when we walked in at 5 minutes to 7. About 30 people were there, most of them looking angry or scared. I recognized George Sullivan and his wife Martha. I saw the family from 2 streets over who had a violation notice about their holiday decorations being up too long. The room buzzed with nervous conversation. Patricia sat at a table at the front of the room with 2 other people I vaguely recognized. One was Kenneth Morrison, a thin man in his 60s who always wore a suit even on weekends. The other was Brenda Yates, a woman in her 40s with frizzy red hair and a permanent expression of disapproval. At exactly 7 p.m., Patricia banged a gavel on the table. This emergency meeting of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA board is now called to order. We have several items on the agenda tonight, but first and foremost is the matter of resident Trevor Simmons and his continued flagrant violations of community standards. I felt every eye in the room turn to me. Jennifer put a hand on my arm, a silent reminder to stay quiet. Mr. Simmons has received multiple violation notices regarding his property maintenance, Patricia continued. Despite repeated warnings, he has failed to remedy the ice hazard on his driveway, which poses a danger to our community. According to our bylaws, the board has the authority to fine residents up to $500 per day for uncorrected violations, and in extreme cases, to revoke property ownership for residents who demonstrate a pattern of disrespect for community standards. Point of order, called out a man I did not recognize. How is anyone supposed to fix ice when it is this cold outside? That is not relevant, Patricia snapped. The bylaws clearly state that driveways must be maintained in safe condition at all times. If Mr. Simmons cannot maintain his property adequately, perhaps he should not own property in Meadowbrook Estates. This is insane, George Sullivan said loudly. Patricia, your own driveway is covered in ice. Are you going to fine yourself $500 a day? My property is none of your concern, George. It sure seems relevant if you are threatening to throw people out of their homes over ice. The room erupted in arguing voices. Patricia banged her gavel repeatedly. Order, order. If you cannot be civil, I will clear this room. Now, the board has discussed Mr. Simmons' violations at length, and we have determined that the appropriate course of action is to begin removal proceedings. Kenneth, do you have the paperwork? Kenneth Morrison shuffled papers nervously. Patricia, I am not sure we should be doing this without consulting a lawyer. We do not need a lawyer. The bylaws are clear. But removal, that seems extreme. Maybe we should just do fines. Kenneth, we voted on this. Do you want to be held personally liable when someone slips on his driveway and sues the HOA? That shut Kenneth up. He passed a document to Patricia, who began reading from it in a formal tone. Pursuant to Section 47 of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA bylaws, the board hereby initiates removal proceedings against Trevor Simmons of 4782 Meadowbrook Lane. Said resident has demonstrated a pattern of violations and disrespect for community standards. The board votes to terminate his property ownership effective March 1, 2026, at which time he will be required to vacate the premises. All in favor? Aye, Patricia said. Aye, Brenda Yates said quietly. Kenneth Morrison said nothing. Kenneth, Patricia prompted sharply. I abstain, he mumbled. 2 votes is a majority. Motion passes. Mr. Simmons, you have until March 1st to vacate your property. The HOA will take possession of your deed and arrange for resale of the property. Proceeds will be used to cover your unpaid fines, which currently total $3,500. Any excess will be refunded to you. The room exploded again. Several people were shouting. George was on his feet, red-faced and yelling. And I just sat there, watching Patricia with a feeling of surreal detachment. She actually thought she could do this. She genuinely believed she had the authority to take my house. Jennifer stood up smoothly, and her movement cut through the chaos. The room gradually quieted. Mrs. Henderson, Jennifer said clearly. My name is Jennifer Nelson. I am Mr. Simmons' attorney. I have a few questions about these proceedings, if you do not mind. Patricia's eyes narrowed. The board has made its decision. There is nothing to discuss. Indulge me. You mentioned Section 47 of the HOA bylaws. Can you show me that section, please? I do not have to show you anything. Actually, under Ohio law, you do. HOA governing documents are required to be made available to homeowners upon request. I made that request this afternoon. You have not provided the documents, but that is okay, because I did my own research today. Jennifer pulled a folder from her bag and held it up. I went to the Franklin County Recorder's office and requested all filed documents related to Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Would you like to know what I found? Patricia's face went pale. That is confidential information. Actually, it is public record, and what I found, Mrs. Henderson, is nothing. There are no articles of incorporation for Meadowbrook Estates HOA. There are no deed restrictions recorded against any property in this subdivision. There is no legal entity called Meadowbrook Estates HOA registered with the state of Ohio or Franklin County. The room went completely silent. That is ridiculous, Patricia said, but her voice shook slightly. We have been operating for 8 years. You may have been operating, but not as a legal HOA. Tell me, Mrs. Henderson, who incorporated the HOA, what law firm handled the paperwork? That was before my time as president. The developer handled it. What developer? What company? I do not remember the name. You do not remember the name of the development company that built this neighborhood? Jennifer's voice was sharp now. How convenient. Well, I can tell you what I found. Meadowbrook Estates was developed by Riverside Construction LLC, which went bankrupt in 2019. Before they went bankrupt, they sold off their remaining assets, including this subdivision. But here is the interesting part. They never filed HOA incorporation documents. They never recorded deed restrictions. They printed up some official-looking bylaws and sold them to buyers as part of closing documents, but they never followed through with the legal filing. That cannot be right, Brenda Yates said, speaking up for the first time. I have been paying HOA dues for 6 years. I am sure you have. And where does that money go, Mrs. Yates? Brenda looked at Patricia, confused. To the HOA account. Patricia manages it. What HOA account? If the HOA is not legally incorporated, it cannot have a corporate bank account. Jennifer turned back to Patricia. Mrs. Henderson, whose name is the HOA bank account in. Patricia stood up abruptly. This meeting is over. Everyone needs to leave. I do not think so, Jennifer said firmly. These people have been paying you money for years. They deserve to know where it has been going. So I will ask you again, whose name is on the account? That is none of your business. Actually, it is everyone in this room's business. You have been collecting dues under false pretenses. You have been issuing violation notices with no legal authority. And tonight, you just attempted to steal Mr. Simmons' property, which, by the way, is a crime. It is called theft by deception, and it is a felony in Ohio. Patricia's face had gone from pale to bright red. I have not stolen anything. I have been trying to maintain property values and keep this neighborhood safe. If these people cannot follow simple rules, they do not deserve to live here. But it is not your neighborhood, Mrs. Henderson. You do not own it. You do not have authority over it. You are just a neighbor who has been pretending to be in charge. I am the HOA president. I was elected. Elected by who? In what legal process? Show me the bylaws. Show me the incorporation documents. Show me any legal proof that your HOA exists. Patricia grabbed her purse from under the table. I do not have to listen to this. Kenneth, Brenda, we are leaving. Actually, you should stay, said a new voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned. 2 police officers stood in the doorway. One was a tall black man with sergeant stripes. The other was a younger woman with her hand resting casually on her belt. I am Sergeant Michael Davis, the tall officer said. We got a call about a disturbance. What is going on here? Jennifer stepped forward. Sergeant, my name is Jennifer Nelson. I am an attorney. I am here with my client, Trevor Simmons. Mrs. Henderson has been operating a fraudulent HOA, collecting dues under false pretenses, and tonight she attempted to illegally seize my client's property. I would like to file a formal complaint. Sergeant Davis looked around the room, taking in the crowd of agitated homeowners. Someone want to explain this from the beginning. For the next 20 minutes, Jennifer laid out everything. She showed the sergeant her research from the recorder's office. She had copies of the violation notices Patricia had issued. She had the document from tonight's meeting where Patricia claimed authority to revoke my property deed. Multiple homeowners stood up to tell their stories of harassment, violations for minor issues, threats of fines and liens. Patricia tried to leave twice, and each time, the younger officer politely but firmly suggested she stay. When everyone was done talking, Sergeant Davis looked at Patricia with an expression of professional disgust. Mrs. Henderson, I am going to need you to come down to the station with us. We need to ask you some questions about these HOA dues you have been collecting. How much money are we talking about? I do not have to tell you that, Patricia said shrilly. That is your right, but we are going to find out anyway when we get a warrant for your bank records. Easier if you cooperate now. He looked at Kenneth and Brenda. You two are on the board. I did not know, Kenneth said quickly, his hands shaking. I thought it was all legal. Patricia handled everything. I just showed up to meetings when she told me to. Same, Brenda said. I have only been on the board for 6 months. Patricia said she needed members to have a quorum. I barely did anything. Sergeant Davis nodded slowly. Okay, you two can go, but do not leave town. We will probably have more questions. He looked at Jennifer. Madam, you said you want to file a formal complaint. I do. On behalf of Mr. Simmons and potentially others in this community. I believe Mrs. Henderson has been committing theft by deception, fraud, and possibly other offenses. I also believe there may be tax implications if she has been collecting money without proper reporting. Tax implications, Patricia sputtered. I have been maintaining this neighborhood. Someone has to do it. The landscaping, the community center, the electric bill for the sign out front, it all costs money. So you admit you have been collecting money? Sergeant Davis asked. Patricia seemed to realize she had said too much. She crossed her arms. I want a lawyer. That is probably a good idea. Come on, let us go have a conversation down at the station. Sergeant Davis gestured to his partner and they escorted Patricia toward the door. As she passed my chair, Patricia turned and glared at me with pure venom. This is all your fault. I was keeping this neighborhood nice, and you had to ruin everything because you could not follow simple rules. Mrs. Henderson, let us go, the younger officer said, taking her arm. They left, and the room sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Then George Sullivan started laughing, a deep belly laugh that shook his whole frame. 8 years, he gasped. 8 years we have been paying her $250 every quarter. That is $2,000 a year. How many houses are in this neighborhood? 80. 83, someone said. 83 houses times $2,000 a year times 8 years. That is over $1 million. The room erupted again, this time in outrage. People were shouting, pulling out phones, demanding to know what to do next. Jennifer raised her hands for quiet. Everyone, please. I know you are angry, you have every right to be, but here is what needs to happen now. First, everyone needs to stop paying HOA dues immediately. There is no HOA, so there is nothing to pay. Second, you should all document every payment you made. Bank statements, canceled checks, whatever you have. Third, we need to organize. You can form a real HOA if you want, but it needs to be done properly, with legal incorporation and recorded deed restrictions. Or you can just be a neighborhood without an HOA. That is up to all of you to decide together. What about the money Patricia took? Someone called out. That will be up to the police and potentially a civil lawsuit. If she has been keeping it in a bank account, there may be funds to recover. If she spent it all, that gets more complicated. But that is a question for law enforcement and the courts. People started breaking into small groups, talking urgently. Several people came up to thank me, which felt strange since I had not really done anything except refuse to be bullied. Jennifer and I stepped outside into the cold night air. Holy crap, I said. Holy crap is right. In 15 years of practicing law, I have never seen anything quite like that. Jennifer was practically vibrating with energy. This is going to be a case study, an entire neighborhood thinking they had an HOA when they never legally did. The liability issues alone are fascinating. What if someone had actually sued the HOA? What if Patricia had tried to foreclose on someone's house? The title issues would have been a nightmare. What happens now? To me, I mean, am I safe in my house? You were always safe in your house. Patricia never had any authority over it. But yes, you are completely clear. No fines, no violations, no eviction. Your property is yours, free and clear of any HOA encumbrance because there is no HOA. I felt tension I did not know I was carrying drain out of my shoulders. Thank you, seriously. I do not know what I would have done if you had not helped. You would have figured it out eventually, but I am glad I could help speed up the process. She checked her watch. It is late. Go home, hug your kids, sleep well. I will call you tomorrow with next steps. We should probably file a civil suit against Patricia to try to recover your dues payments. And I want to talk to the prosecutor's office about criminal charges. I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying the evening over and over. When I got home, Tyler and Emma were already asleep. Linda had texted that she had made it to Cleveland and her mom was doing okay. I responded with a thumbs-up emoji, too tired for more. I fell into bed and slept harder than I had in months. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7. It was George Sullivan. "Trevor, turn on the news." Channel 4. I stumbled to the living room and flipped on the TV. A reporter stood in front of the Meadowbrook Estates sign. New developments this morning in what is being called the HOA fraud case. Patricia Henderson of Columbus was arrested last night after it was discovered she had been operating a fraudulent homeowners association for 8 years, collecting dues from residents under false pretenses. According to sources, Henderson may have collected more than $1 million during that time. She is being held on charges of theft by deception and fraud. Residents of Meadowbrook Estates say they are shocked and angry. The camera cut to an interview with Martha Sullivan. "We trusted her. We thought she was keeping our neighborhood nice, and now we find out it was all a lie." My phone rang again. It was Jennifer. "Have you seen the news? Watching it now." "Okay, so here is where we are. The prosecutor's office is taking this very seriously. They executed a search warrant on Patricia's home and bank accounts this morning. Apparently, she was keeping the HOA money in a personal savings account in her name only. The good news is most of the money is still there, about $800,000. The bad news is she spent about $300,000 over the years. On what? From what I am hearing, legitimate neighborhood expenses like landscaping and utilities for the community center, but also some questionable stuff. Expensive dinners she called board meetings. A new car she claimed was for HOA business. A vacation she said was to an HOA conference. The prosecutor is still going through all the records. Can people get their money back? Probably most of it, eventually. It will go through the court system. Assets will be seized, restitution will be ordered, but it could take a while." She paused. "There is something else. Kenneth Morrison came to see me this morning. He wants to cooperate fully. He brought me every document he has related to the HOA, including internal emails between him and Patricia. Some of them are pretty damning. Patricia knew there were issues with the legal status of the HOA. She had been told by someone years ago that the incorporation was never filed properly, but she ignored it and kept operating anyway. So she committed fraud knowingly. Looks like it. That is going to make the criminal case much stronger. Kenneth is terrified he is going to be charged as an accomplice, so he is trying to get ahead of it. I do not think the prosecutor is interested in him, though. He is clearly just a puppet who did not know what was going on." Over the next few weeks, the story grew. Local news picked it up, then regional news, then it went viral on social media. HOA president arrested for running fake. HOA became a headline that people loved. The comments were brutal, full of people sharing their own HOA horror stories and celebrating Patricia's downfall. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that she had been providing valuable services to the neighborhood and had not intended to defraud anyone. The prosecutor's office was not buying it. They filed additional charges of money laundering and falsifying business records. In March, Jennifer filed a civil lawsuit on behalf of all Meadowbrook Estates residents, seeking full recovery of dues paid plus damages. Patricia's assets were frozen pending resolution of the criminal case. Through all of this, life slowly returned to normal in Meadowbrook Estates. Without Patricia issuing violation notices every week, people relaxed. The ice on my driveway eventually melted when temperatures rose in March. No one complained about my garbage cans or my leaves or anything else. A group of neighbors organized a meeting to discuss whether we wanted to form a real HOA. The consensus was a resounding no. We agreed to chip in voluntarily for basic common area maintenance like the community sign and the playground, but no rules, no violations, no board with enforcement power. Just neighbors being neighbors. Tyler and Emma asked me about the news coverage, having seen it at their friends' houses. I explained it as simply as I could. A woman had been pretending to be in charge of our neighborhood when she was not, and now she was in trouble for it. "Is that why you were worried?" Emma asked. "Yeah, baby, but it is all fixed now. We are not going anywhere." She hugged me tight, and I held her, grateful beyond words that we were safe and stable. In May, Patricia Henderson pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges including theft by deception, fraud, and money laundering. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution of all funds collected, plus damages. Her house was sold to help pay the restitution. Her husband, who apparently had no idea what she had been doing, filed for divorce. By July, most residents had received checks for their dues payments. Not everything, but a substantial amount. I got back about 70% of what I had paid, which was better than I had expected. The Meadowbrook Estates civil lawsuit settled out of court, with Patricia's insurance company paying additional damages for emotional distress and legal fees. I got a check for $15,000, which I put directly into my kids' college fund. Life moved on. The neighborhood was quieter, friendlier, less stressed. Without the constant threat of violation notices and fines, people actually talked to each other at the mailbox, waved when driving past, helped each other with yard work. One Saturday in August, I was outside washing my car when George Sullivan walked over with 2 beers. "Thought you might want one," he said, handing me a cold bottle. "Thanks." We stood in my driveway, drinking beer in the summer sunshine. "You know, I have lived here 8 years and I have talked to you more in the last few months than I did in the previous 8, George said. "Patricia kept people afraid," I said. "Afraid to be outside, afraid to be noticed, afraid to do anything wrong. Not just afraid, divided." She would tell me about other people's violations, make it seem like they were bad neighbors bringing down property values, made everyone suspicious of everyone else. Turns out we are all just regular people trying to live our lives. "Yep. Your driveway looks good, by the way. No ice at all." He grinned. I laughed. "Give it 6 months." We stood there companionably, watching kids ride bikes in the street, listening to someone's music playing from a backyard, smelling someone's grill heating up. Normal neighborhood sounds, the kind you barely notice until they have been missing. "Hey, Trevor," George said after a while. "Yeah. Thanks for not backing down. A lot of us were too scared to fight her. You stood up and it made a difference." I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just got mad and I got lucky that Jennifer was good at her job. Still, thank you." That evening, I sat on my back deck with Tyler and Emma, making s'mores over a little fire pit I had bought. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Emma was chattering about her summer camp, and Tyler was actually paying attention instead of being glued to his phone. "Dad," Tyler said suddenly. "Yeah, bud, that thing with the HOA lady, you did good." Coming from a 12-year-old boy, that was high praise. I ruffled his hair and he ducked away but was grinning. "Thanks, kiddo." I thought about everything that had happened, from that first orange violation notice to Patricia being led away by police to this peaceful August evening with my kids. The whole situation had been insane, stressful, and expensive. But it had also taught me something important. Do not assume that just because someone claims authority, they actually have it. Question. Verify. Stand up for yourself. And sometimes when you dig into why someone is making your life miserable, you discover they have been lying all along. The ICE violations, the threats of eviction, The whole elaborate structure of rules and enforcement had all been built on nothing. Patricia Henderson had been running a con, whether she admitted it to herself or not, using fear and official-sounding language to bully an entire neighborhood into submission. But the thing about building power on lies is that eventually, someone is going to check your foundation. And when they do, the whole thing comes crashing down. I watched my kids laugh and argue over who got the last marshmallow, and I felt grateful that we had been the ones to push back, to demand proof, to refuse to be intimidated. This was our home, legally purchased and rightfully owned. No fake HOA president could take that away. In the end, justice had been served. Patricia was in prison, the money was being returned, and Meadowbrook Estates was finally what it should have been all along. Just a neighborhood, full of regular people living their regular lives, without someone pretending to control them. The ice on my driveway had long since melted. The violations had stopped, and life, beautifully boring and normal life, continued on. Several months later, on a cold November day, I found myself back at Jennifer Nelson's office. She had called and asked me to come in, saying she had some final paperwork related to the case. "Trevor, come in," she said warmly when I arrived. "How are things?" "Good. Really good, actually. Kids are doing well, work is steady, and the neighborhood is peaceful. It is amazing what happens when no one is sending threatening letters every week." She laughed. "I bet. So I wanted to update you on a few things. First, the criminal restitution is nearly complete. Everyone should have their full refunds by the end of the year. Patricia's pension was also seized, and that covered most of the remaining gap. That is great news. Second, I wanted to show you something." She pulled out a thick document. Several residents came to me asking about forming a legitimate HOA. Not like Patricia's fake one, but a real, properly incorporated association with reasonable rules and democratic governance. I told them I thought it was a terrible idea and they should stay free, but they insisted. So I drew up proper articles of incorporation, bylaws, everything. It is going to be filed with the county next week. I flipped through the document. The rules were minimal. Maintain your property in reasonable condition. Do not create nuisances. Pay voluntary dues of $50 annually for common area maintenance. There were no provisions for violations or fines, just a simple dispute resolution process. The board had strict term limits and required regular elections. "This is actually reasonable," I said, surprised. "I know. It is amazing what you can create when the goal is community building rather than control." She took the document back. "You do not have to join if you do not want to. It is completely optional, but I thought you should know it exists. I will think about it. $50 a year is not too bad if it means the playground gets maintained and the sign gets fixed when it breaks. That is the idea. Low-key, cooperative, voluntary." She smiled. A radical concept, apparently. As I left her office and drove home, I thought about how much had changed in less than a year. Last February, I had been standing in the freezing cold, staring at a violation notice and wondering if I was going to lose my house. Now, the nightmare was over, the villain was in prison, and the neighborhood was rebuilding on a foundation of actual cooperation rather than fear. It was not the ending I had expected when I first saw that orange paper taped to my door, but it was the ending we all deserved. When I got home, there was a package on my doorstep. I brought it inside and opened it to find a bottle of wine and a card signed by 37 of my neighbors. The message was simple. "Thank you for having the courage to fight back. Here is to a neighborhood free from fake HOAs and real from each other." I put the wine in my rack and stuck the card on my refrigerator, where I would see it every day. Then I called my kids to tell them I loved them. heated up leftover pizza for dinner, and settled in to watch TV. Outside, the first snow of the season started to fall, light flakes drifting down and beginning to coat the streets and driveways. By morning, there would probably be ice. And this time, no one would send me a violation notice for it. That was freedom. That was home. And it was worth every moment of the fight to keep it.